Hello everyone, my name is Beckett and welcome back to the channel. And today in Division 2 we're going to be breaking down another build video for you guys. And this is something I've been using in this Shade Exposed event, as well as it'll work perfectly fine in any heroic random mission. We're going to be breaking out the True Patriot set finally. But before we get started, if you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe, and if you like the video, smash that like button. Alright, first off, let's get into the playstyle. Since we're going to be using True Patriots, we are going to be using a nearly full armor build, but don't worry, the damage that is coming out of it is quite sustainable, and you're going to have no issue plowing through everything. As long as you can keep your red, white, and blue buffs up, which won't be a problem. You'll just have to make sure you target high health enemies. So we're going to be looking for purples, elites, named enemies, things like this. It'll be pretty easy because if we put it on a red enemy, guaranteed it's not going to stay up and we're just going to be losing damage. As always, I love to put aggressive builds. Every once in a while I do skill builds, but generally we are going to be doing run and gun. So let's hop into the specialization. Alright, for our specializations, we are going to be running the fire starter, mostly just for the striker shield so we can get that extra 12% damage per enemy, and it stacks up pretty well because we're going to be right in front of everybody at all times. You could also, if you wanted to add, let's say, another red core, you could put in the technician specialization and use the artificer, as well as just make sure you have a tier 6 shield, and you'll be putting out a little more damage, but you're going to be a little more squishy. At the end of the day, it's up to you, but my suggestion is stick with Firestarter. Alright, so let's take a look at the weapons we're going to be using. So this Scorpio is going to be our main hand weapon. We're going to be using that 99 to 100% of the time. It is just an amazing weapon. You can get it from this season's pass, so if you haven't made it to level 55 yet, it's definitely worth busting it out before the next season hits. Now, the great thing about this, every time we get a shot, we'll do a bleed, we'll do a disorient, we'll do a shock, and then on our 7th shot, we're going to increase damage by 20% to all enemies. This is very great, and it just adds a little bit of extra damage to our build. On top of the Scorpio, it just does so much damage by itself. Now, if you want to, you can see in my secondary, I was using the Grudge, and you can lower your critical hit chance to about 40, and you'll be able to hit your cap still. You just need to make sure you land a kill with that gun and then swap back over to your Scorpio. Now, I wouldn't suggest this because I was using it and I just kept forgetting to pull it out. It's easier just to hit like 50% critical hit chance and you'll be fine, and just put the rest into critical hit damage. Now, as for our gear, we're going to be using the exotic Memento backpack. Just an amazing backpack. It's going to give us a skill tier, full armor, and 15% extra weapon damage. On top of that, every time we pick up one of the little tokens, it's going to give us 50% of our armor, which equals to about 750,000. Not a bad place to be at. On top of that, it's also going to give us 30% weapon damage, 20% skill efficiency, and 3% armor regen, which is going to keep us in the fight longer, even if our shield goes down, as well as our chest piece is going to have a lot of synergy with this Memento backpack, and we're never going to be in a situation where we're going to be in too much trouble as long as we are staying close and we are picking up our kill tokens. Now, as for our chest piece, I went ahead and went with the Bellstone Armory to give us that 1% armor regen. So that's going to put us up to 4% armor regen, which is quite a bit when you're at 5 armor cores. And you could always go with a Badger chest piece if you want to add a little bit extra shotgun damage. But I felt like there was many times where I was so low or where I didn't even have armor. I just had bonus armor rolling until the regen started kicking in. As for our chest piece talent, we're going to be running Intimidate. So whenever we have bonus armor and within 10 meters of any enemy, we're going to be doing 35% extra weapon damage. That's going to pick up the slack on running all those armor cores, and it's going to have great synergy with the Memento. Since we're always going to have bonus armor, I found it very few and far between where there were moments where I didn't have bonus armor. So it's pretty much you're always going to be close to someone and you're always going to have that bonus armor rolling. More often, I had bonus armor and no actual armor running, so you're not really going to run into too many issues as long as you play this build fairly aggressive. As for a 4-piece, we will be running the True Patriot gear set. It has a nice little 3-piece, 30% extra magazine size. Now that's going to add a little bit extra shots into our Scorpio. Instead of sitting at 8, we're going to be sitting at 10. Not too bad, and it has the nice gear set of red, white, and blue for the 4-piece. So you're going to see a little buff on your screen, and it will be part of an American flag. It'll be red, white, or blue, and that's going to change every couple of seconds. Now, when you shoot the enemy, it will apply that buff. So if it's red, it's going to apply that buff and amplify the enemy's damage taken by 8%, and that's an extra modifier, so it's actually a little more than 8%. And when you apply it when it's white, you're going to shoot the enemy and repair the armor of the agent who is attacking by 2% once every second. Now, when it comes to the blue, it's going to decrease the enemy's damage dealt by 8%, just a little more mitigation for you. Now, once you have all those buffs rolling on that enemy, once it dies, you don't have to kill it, just anyone can kill it. It's going to do an explosion that will hit everything in a 5-yard AoE, and it's going to do quite a bit of damage, and that is equal to the armor and the health of the enemy. So ideally, we're going to be wanting to target those elites, those purples, those named enemies, because it's going to do a hell of a lot of damage. Now, with the Scorpio, you can probably tag 3 or 4 different enemies at once, and you're able to do multiple explosions at once, but it does quite a bit of damage, and I would not sleep on that. You just want to make sure you use it effectively. Now, as for our skills, we will be using the Striker Shield from the Firestarter Specialization, and it has a nice little buff. So every time you pull out that Striker Shield, you're going to see a little orange cone in front of you, and for every enemy within there, it's going to add an extra damage bonus. At the stock shield, it's just going to be 5% damage per enemy. Now, since we're going to be at the 6th tier shield, it's going to add 2% extra buff to that. As well, we're going to want to use the mod, and you're going to want to try to get it as close to max. I believe mine is at 4 or 5%. So for every enemy that's in there, I get 12% extra damage per enemy. And ideally, we're always going to be close range with our Memento and our Intimidate talent. So this is not going to be an issue, and it's just going to add that much extra damage to our build and loadout. Now, as for our other skill, I went with the Defender Drone just for the extra mitigation, because we are going to be taking a lot of damage. Like I've said, there's many times where I'm like at no armor, but it's 100% bonus armor. So just that little bit of extra mitigation helps. And with all that extra skill efficiency, you should be able to use it about every 10 to 15 seconds, and it lasts about 20 to 25 seconds, so it's not going to be an issue, and it's going to mitigate about 25% damage. So you're going to have a 25% flat damage reduction when it is up and rolling, and a lot of times your shield will get knocked down from dealing with multiple chungas at once. So having that extra little barrier feels a little more helpful, and I just feel like I can stay in the fight a little longer as long as that is running. You could also go with any other CC ability, but that's just my personal preference. Now, if you went with the Technician Specialization, go ahead and throw the Artificer up, just because it's going to keep your shield up 100% of the time. Now, as for mods, you're going to want to be running the Specialization mods that you get with it. So I believe it's like 8% shield health and active regeneration for the last mod. You're going to want to make sure you have the damage bonus per enemy. That's going to add a lot of extra damage to this build. Now, when it comes to the Defender Drone, just look for anything with skill haste, duration, and deflector. Now, as for our stats, since we are going to be running the Memento, we have a little more freedom. So I am running the Memento, plus I re-rolled one of my pieces to a red core, whatever piece, it doesn't really matter. And you're going to want to make sure you stack critical hit chance to at least up to 40. If you're using the Grudge, you can stay at 40. Now, if you want to go up a little further, I went to 50, and I felt like that was a good enough place, just because there's always people running Coyote's Mask. It's not really going to be an issue. And then my critical hit damage ended up at 90, but if you stay at 40, you're going to be able to push it a little more further, and you're going to get over 100% critical hit damage. You can also go another way and just stack all handling and have those instant reloads on the Scorpio, just because there are instances where the reloads kind of screw you over. So it's just going to be a user preference. If you feel like, I don't really like the critical hit damage, it doesn't feel like it's adding that much damage, go ahead and switch over to handling, and it's not really going to affect the build that much. Now, let's talk about some best practices when running this build. Remember, we are using the Memento, so you're going to feel a little squishy until you hit about 15 to 20 stacks. After that, you can kind of just go ham. And then when it comes to the true Patriot, you really want to make sure you're managing this buff. Make sure you're putting it on the right enemy, because if you are just shooting red enemies, your buff really isn't doing much and you are losing out a lot of damage. Like I said, on a big elite, you are doing 2 million AoE damage to every enemy around it. So when you have those spawn points where they come out, make sure you get it on that elite, take out that elite, and you're going to start seeing damage chain like crazy. And sometimes if everyone is packed in close enough, you can even get all 3 buffs on the red guys and just kind of spread out those shots. And then you see some really crazy explosions. Now your shield is not going to be totally invincible. That's why we are running in the defender drone. So just kind of make sure you manage your cooldowns. When I see my shield getting down kind of low, I will pop out my defender drone. And a lot of times when I'm going into a room initially, I will pop both so I can just go crazy on everything, get those explosions going off, get that damage off, and it will take a lot of pressure off your team. And a lot of times you're just going to end up stealing all the kills, because as soon as you see those kill confirms start dropping and you get all that bonus armor, you're really going to start ramping up and doing quite a bit of damage. Other than that, that's pretty straightforward. This is the build I've been using in the Shade Exposed event, and I'm going to be using it for the rest of the event until that closes out. It is pretty powerful. When you get that full stack of Shade Exposed, you are going to be pumping out some serious damage. When your pellets per pellet is hitting like 5 to 800k, you start just melting everything. You're two-shotting warhounds. It doesn't really matter. Chungas are dropping instantly, and it's really fun build to play. I hope you guys enjoy. And if you guys are looking for other build videos, I do that, tutorials, Division 2 news, everything for old players to new players and everything in between. And thanks again for watching.